In this video, we're going to be simulating a coin flip using the RANDBETWEEN, if, and COUNTIF functions. So to get started for this video and those other ones we're going to be using in this set of videos, let's download this Excel file and open the Excel file. So we're going to need to, since we downloaded from the internet, we need to enable the editing. So I have a list of instructions. These are not real detailed instructions, but it'll give us a overview of what we're going to be doing in each video. So let's begin with the coin flip. So I'm going to click on the coin flip tab, and it's blank. So I'm going to create a column called random number. And I'll click between the A and the B to resize it. Do some simple formatting, bold, and give it a bottom border. Now I'm just going to type equals rand, equals ARND. This particular function does not have any parameters, but in Excel you always have to input parentheses for any type of function that you're using. So this one you just do equals rand with an open and closed parentheses. And it gives us a number between 0 and 1. This point, in this case I got 0.868. Now you got a different one because it's a random number, and each computer running Excel has its own random number generator. The F9 on the top of your keyboard is the recalculate button. So if I hit that again and again, I get a different random number every time I compute it. So let's put another heading in. I'm going to call this heads or tails. And I'll double click to resize it, bold it. Now for this one I'm going to put in an if statement. And I'm going to look at this number, and if it's greater than or 0.5, then I'm going to declare that that is a heads. If it's less than or equal to 0.5, then it'll be a tails. Normally you kind of have to worry about ties, but because there are like 10 decimal points here, there's not any possibility of it being exactly 0.50000 or nothing that we really have to worry about. So I'm going to input an if statement. So with the if statements, if you do them by hand, you type equals if with a parentheses, and then you have an equation. So what are you evaluating? In this case, we're looking at the value in point A2, and we want to determine whether it is greater than 0.5. There's two different ways you could do it. If you could do it greater than and put heads as the first possibility, or tails if it's not. I'm going to type is A2. Notice that it highlights the cell in blue. If it's greater than 0.5, I'm going to put a comma in here. So notice the probably kind of small in the video, but it says if logical test, and after the comma, value if true. So this case I want the value if it's true. Because I'm wanting to put in a text value of heads, I have to put that in quotes. So text entries always go in quotes. And then I'm going to put in another comma, and I want to insert the value if it's false. So I'm going to type quote tails. And when I finish the formula, I'm going to hit the enter key, and it's going to give me a new number. So my number was 0.446. That's less than 0.5, so it is putting tails in here. So I'm going to hit my F9 repeatedly and just kind of eyeball it to make sure it's working as planned. I'm going to select the two columns and center them. And I'll hit the F9 a few more times. And it seems to be working as planned. When I get numbers less than 0.5, it's showing tails. When I'm getting numbers greater than 0.5, it's showing heads. Well, so let me show you another way to do this. There's a related function to rand called RANDBETWEEN, where you can specify specific range that it can choose a random number between. So I'm going to type RANDBETWEEN. Let me try that again. But now instead of having just a blank entry between the two parentheses, my parameters, as it shows in the preview here, are bottom and top. So I'm going to type 1, 100, and it's going to choose a number between 1 and 100. So as I hit the F9 button, it's randomly choosing a number from 1 to 100. But now my if statement doesn't work anymore because it's looking at a decimal value. And since the lowest number is 1, they're all going to be greater than 0.5. So it's always showing heads. So let me modify this to, instead of 0.5, I want greater than 50. Now in this case, I would have to be careful about having exactly 50 numbers in the tails and exactly 50 numbers in the heads. So here I want, because I'm starting 1 to 50, there's 50 numbers in that range, and between 51 and 100, there's also 50. So what I have here is actually correct. A2 greater than 50. So the minimum number to get a heads is 51. If it's 1 to 50, then I get a tails. So I want the 50 to be a tails. So if I had an equal sign here, greater than or equal to 50, then I would have a problem. But greater than 50 works. So I'm going to hit F9 a bunch of times. And it seems to be working fine. So let's copy these cells down. So I'm going to select cells A2 and B2, and I'm going to drag down all the way to row 101. So I want to make 100 copies of this. I want to simulate 100 flips of the coin. So I'm going to take my anchor in the lower right hand side of cell B2 after selecting A2 and B2, and I'm going to drag down until I reach row 101. Because we have a heading, we wouldn't want to stop at row 100, then we would only have 99 flips. So since we have a heading in row 1 and we're starting the data in row 2, we go down to a row 101. So now I'm going to add one more heading. Number of heads. So we're going to count the number of times heads was selected. Every time I do any kind of entry here, it recomputes. So now I want to do my CountIf function that we learned in week 1. So you may not be familiar with this one, so I'm going to use the insert function. Because I searched for this last week, it shows up in my list, but if it did not, I could type CountIf and click go, and then I get a list of functions, including the CountIf, but other things that might be similar. So I'm going to click OK with the CountIf, and I'm going to get my function window. So my range here, there's two ways you could do this. You could count the number of heads or count the number of random numbers that are greater than or equal to 50. They both are kind of the same. So I'm going to look in range B2 through B101. And when you have a range, you use a colon to separate the beginning and ending of the range. And I get my preview here that shows heads, tails, tails. So this gives me some assurance that I'm selecting the right column. And my criteria is going to be heads. And again, since it's a text value, I have to put the criteria in quotes. And for this particular set of data, I have 48. You have a different set of random numbers, so yours is not going to be 48. It'll vary each time you recompute. So I'm going to click OK. I'm going to center this column. And I'll hit F9 repeatedly. So I got exactly 50 that time. But the number should more or less average out to around 50. Sometimes you get a set of luck that makes the number a little bit bigger. So I had a 61 there. Might be, usually they're between like 40 and 60. So we're simulating, it should be exactly the same results if we had 1,000,000 of these. If you were to take a coin and flip it and take a piece of paper and check every time you got a head and every time you got a tails, this should be exactly the same result. So we were able to create a worksheet that simulated the flipping of a coin. So let's save our file, and then I'll see you in the next video.